Hey guys, Kelly Vivio Cosplay here. Welcome back to the channel. I'm doing a little different intro today because I didn't feel like putting on makeup, so just going to get right into what we're going to talk about today, and that's embroidery, obviously. This is a piece I'm currently working on for my Twilight Princess Zelda costume, but I'm going to kind of cover the basics of getting started with embroidery for your cosplays. So embroidery for cosplay is a great way to add designs and details to your costumes with thread. Now, most of the embroidery work I do is all done by hand, so this is all hand stitched on this fabric here. I drew out the design myself, and I've been working through hand stitching this. Anybody can really get into embroidery. You just need the right supplies and tools to get started. So let's go ahead and talk about fabrics. I prefer embroidering on natural fabrics, so cottons, silks. Those are my personal preferences. So you can really embroider on any fabric that you should choose. That's what I like to embroider on. That's what I tend to work with. So this year I'm embroidering on a cotton sateen. I've also worked on silks. I've embroidered on, silk dupioni and taffeta. I've also embroidered on silk organza. So, it just depends on what you need for your specific project. Obviously with this, I'm embroidering directly onto the fabric that's becoming my costume. But you can also get things like, let me grab it here, organza to make appliques out of. This is a polyester organza. I'm going to try embroidering on this. We'll see how it goes. If I don't really enjoy it, then I'll get some silk to make the appliques with. Organza is a great way to make your appliques to sew right onto your fabric. As far as your embroidery goes. And with polyester, a great thing is you can use heat and essentially burn the edges to seal the fibers since they're plastic. Now, to start embroidering, the first thing you're obviously going to need is your needle and thread, and you're going to need an embroidery hoop. So you're going to want to work with specifically embroidery needles. These are, sizes 3 through 9 embroidery needles. And the thing about embroidery needles is they specifically have a larger eye on the top for you to put your thread through, obviously. So you're going to want to make sure you use these for your embroidery projects. You're also going to need hoops. You can see this is a large 12-inch here, but they come in many sizes, and they come in both plastic and wood. Personally, I prefer wooden hoops, but the plastic ones work just as well. This one is missing the middle, it's up on my rack, but you get the idea. Now, obviously we use the hoops to stretch the fabric out for when you embroider it. And then you're going to also need thread. So here's my bin of thread that I have. And the thread I tend to work with is the DMC threads here. You can get these at your local Joann's, Michael's, whatever you choose. This is a 6-strand embroidery thread. This is what I typically work with. So I'll be going over in my next video about satin stitching, talking about working with the 6-strand embroidery thread a little more when I get into the actual stitching. This is how it comes. Normally they cost like anywhere from like 60 to 90 cents, I think, per I forget what the technical term for this bundle of thread is, but it's typically called floss or embroidery floss more so than thread, and it comes in a lot of different varieties. These are the colors I have here, and you can literally get just about any color you can imagine. You can also get embroidery threads that are just thicker woven threads like this. The thing with the 6-strand floss is these are meant to be pulled apart, so you can work with as many strands as you'd like, whereas the thicker threads like these types are meant to be worked with as is. They don't get pulled apart when you're working with them. So these are great, if you want to work with just this straight up thickness for your embroidery. I've used these for edging on projects, and I've used it for the edging on my Padme packing gown. They also make like metallic threads, which you see here. This is what I used for Queen Amidala's gown. When I stitched it, I used the metallic thread like this. They also make 6 strands in like metallic colors and a variety of types that you can work with. So I just got this bin recently, but it's just like an $8 bin you can get at Joann's, meant for storing your threads. And then you can get, these are just spools specifically meant for embroidery thread storage, so you can wrap your embroidery thread around that and store it nice and neat in a container like this. This one will get wrapped. I just saved it like this for the video so you guys can see what it looks like. But this way they're easy to organize and store. So once you've obviously selected the threads for your project, you're gonna need to get your design onto your fabric. Now the way I did it for this is, let me grab my, so for this piece here, I actually sketched out my design directly onto the pattern for my glove here. And then I was able to, because this is a white cotton, I was able to lay this over top of the design and actually just trace it essentially right onto the white cotton sateen, because I was able to see the darker pencil markings through the fabric. Now obviously not always going to be working with white fabric, so it's not always going to be possible. So, you know, for marking this, I just used a blue, you know, water soluble marking pencil. It also comes in white that you can use on darker fabrics. You can also get heat transfer paper. So essentially this is a tracing pad to create transfer patterns on. So you can use this, it's got all the instructions right here. It's essentially paper that you would draw on, and using heat you can then transfer it with an iron onto your fabric that you're going to work with. Now you have to remember, when you work with something like this, your design's going to need to be flipped so that when you transfer it onto the fabric, it's the right side. Now that's if it's an asymmetrical design. If it's symmetrical, you don't really have to worry about that. But it gives you all the instructions on how to transfer this right onto your fabric. You can also buy transfer pens. Now these, the only thing with transfer pens like this is they're permanent. They're not able to be washed off. So, you know, it depends on what you're working with your project, and you want to make sure that if you're going to work with something like this, that your embroidery is going to completely cover the pen that you're going to transfer onto your fabric. This obviously comes in a variety of colors. I have used these with success. And I was recently brought to attention to this by, oh my gosh, Amazonian Cosplay. She's using this for her Sansa Stark embroidery, but these are, these are printable water-soluble stabilizers. So you can use this, basically stick it on whatever you're going to embroider on, and then you can wash away. So you could basically create your design digitally, print it onto this, stick it down, and then ta-da! This is a great way to do embroidery patterns. So I'm excited to give these a try. I've never used them, but this should be a great tool as well for embroidery. Now, these are stabilizers, and so it's, you know, ideal for hand embroidery, cross stitching, stuff like that. You don't necessarily need to use stabilizer with your embroidery projects. I, you know, have really never used stabilizer unless I felt the need to. The only time I've ever used a stabilizing agent was when I was doing my Queen Amidala embroidery, and I really needed the taffeta to remain very stiff on the sleeves anyways for the shape of the costume, so they were stabilized on top of interfaced. So, you know, I was sewing through something thicker, but this piece here, like, there's no stabilizer on this, and I've never had any issues. You can use it if you want to. I usually don't, but it is something you can use, and just, you know, do your research if that's something you decide to use with your embroidery. But I've had plenty of success without using it on fabrics. My Sarah costume, I didn't use stabilizer for any of the embroidery on that either. And one other tool that I just recently got that I recommend you get is one of these. So this is an embroidery stand. So basically this will hold your embroidery hoop You can adjust the height, you can rotate it and adjust the position of it. And then it's got a base here, and you can literally like work on your couch or however you want on your embroidery projects. Your wrists won't get nearly as tired. This cost me like I think $30 on Amazon, and it was a great purchase, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, if you're gonna plan on doing a lot of embroidery or a large project, you know, these are really handy. Now I tend to try to keep my embroidery pieces not too large, and a couple tips when you're gonna be working on embroidery is, you know, when I say not too large, I mean I want it to be able to be easily workable. So like, for example, this is just the glove fabric, so it's not a very big piece of fabric. For the dress, when I get to Zelda, I'm gonna do appliques because I don't feel like lugging around giant dress panels everywhere to sew the embroidery onto. So if I can avoid doing that, I will, you know, I'll do something like appliques instead, and then I will sew those on after. Now when you're working with doing embroidery, like, you want to make sure that when you put it in your hoops that you've got it nice and taut. I'm constantly always making sure that my hoop is nice and tight and my fabric is pulled nice and tight. You know, it should almost be like the surface of a drum. It should be taut when you're working on it. You don't want to have loose fabric when you're trying to sew your embroidery. And you don't need to pull hard, you know, when you're doing your stitches and things like that. And it's just about practice and consistency in order to do embroidery. So I think that kind of covers like the basics of what you're gonna need and to get started. And my next video will kind of cover how to specifically do satin stitching like this, which will actually cover 2 stitches. I'm going to cover how to do back stitch, and then I'm going to cover how I do satin stitching. So hopefully that will help you guys get started. Satin stitching is really easy embroidery technique to do, but there are so many different embroidery stitches out there, so don't be afraid to, you know, look up additional stitches, do tests on swatches of fabric, and yeah, have fun and play around with your designs. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do, because I love it. If you guys have any questions, additional questions about, you know, kind of getting started with embroidery for your costumes, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't answer them, I will do my best to point you in a direction where you can locate that answer. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe for more cosplay content, and to make sure that you get notifications of my upcoming tutorial videos, including some more stuff about embroidery. So I'll see you guys next time.